My name is Nancy. I'm 25 now, but in my memory, I'm perpetually 17, standing at the edge of a high-gloss mahogany table that felt more like an altar for my own sacrifice. It was the night of the Platinum Achievement Gala. My father's architectural firm had just landed a landmark contract, and my younger brother, Leo, had been named valedictorian of his elite private academy. The house was a temple of glass and steel in the hills of Aspen, filled with people who smelled like expensive tobacco and aged scotch. I had just been accepted into a regional design school with a small grant, nothing compared to Leo's Ivy League trajectory, so my acceptance letter sat crumpled in the pocket of my thrifted dress, a secret I knew better than to share. I was the invisible gears in their clockwork life. My job was to ensure the hors d'oeuvres never ran dry and the guests' coats were perfectly catalogued. My mother, Vivian, moved through the crowd like a polished diamond, beautiful, hard, and capable of cutting anyone who got too close. She wasn't intoxicated yet, but her smile had that razor-edged sharpness I'd learned to fear. My father, Alistair, was performing the role of the great patriarch, laughing with a boom that didn't reach his eyes, checking his watch as if counting the minutes until he could stop pretending to like his friends. Halfway through the main course, Vivian clinked her baccarat crystal. The room settled into an expectant hush. People pulled out their phones, expecting a toast to the family's brilliance. She stood behind my chair, her hands resting on my shoulders. Her rings felt cold against my skin, like lead weights. "I have to introduce the most unique part of our portfolio," she announced, her voice honeyed and mocking. The guests leaned in. "Our daughter, Nancy." She paused, letting the silence stretch until it felt uncomfortable. "The one project we couldn't quite bring to code, our beautiful, expensive little error." The room didn't gasp, they laughed, a slow, rolling tide of polite, upper-class chuckles that felt like being pelted with stones. My father pointed his wineglass at me and added, "She's the 1% of the budget we wish we'd diverted to the landscaping." More laughter. A flash went off in my face as a family friend captured my burning cheeks for a social media story. I stared at the centerpiece, a cluster of white orchids, and realized this wasn't a joke. It was a manifesto. They had been building this narrative for years, brick by brick. Every unplanned surprise comment and every "we didn't expect to be parents again" remark had been leading to this public branding. I pushed my chair back. The screech of wood against the stone floor was the only protest I had. "Oh, sit down, Nancy. Don't be a martyr," Vivian whispered, her grip tightening until her nails dug in. "It's all in good fun. We love you, in our way." "In your way?" I repeated. My voice was steady, a strange contrast to the roaring in my ears. I walked out. I didn't run. I went upstairs, to the room that had always felt like a guest suite I was overstaying in. I packed a canvas bag with 3 changes of clothes, my heavy-duty charcoal pencils, and the $42 I'd saved from selling sketches to kids at school. I didn't slam the door. I walked back down the stairs just as the dessert was being served. I walked to the head of the table, placed my house key on Alistair's bread plate, and looked him in the eye. "You're going to regret making me the punchline," I said. My mother rolled her eyes. "Where will you go, Nancy? You don't even have a coat." "Away from here, which means I'm already doing better than you." I stepped out into the freezing Aspen night with a backpack and a label I refused to wear for one more second. I didn't know where the bus was going, only that it was leaving. 8 years later, when they were standing on my doorstep in the rain, broken and gray-faced, I remembered every single second of that walk into the dark, and I made sure they remembered it too.
The bus station smelled of stale popcorn and diesel, but it felt like the first breath of oxygen I'd ever taken. I bought a ticket for the furthest destination my $42 and a bit of loose change could buy. Seattle, a city of rain and steel. On the overnight ride, my phone screamed with notifications. "Mom, stop this tantrum, it's embarrassing. Dad, don't do something stupid, we have brunch at the club tomorrow." Leo, "They were just joking, Nancy. Come back so I can get my car keys." Not one person asked if I was warm. Not one person asked if I was safe. I turned the phone off and dropped it into a trash can at a rest stop in Idaho. I wasn't their error anymore. I was a ghost. When I landed in Seattle, the city swallowed me whole. I lived in a youth hostel for 48 hours before my money ran out. I spent the third night in a 24-hour laundromat, clutching my bag and sketching the people who came in to dry their lives on high heat. The next morning, I walked until my feet bled. I found a metalworking shop on the edge of the industrial district called the Foundry. It was a grimy, loud, honest place. A woman with grease-stained overalls and a welding mask pushed up on her forehead was moving sheets of steel. "You hirin'?" I asked. She looked me over, the expensive but dirty Aspen clothes, the hollowed-out look in my eyes. "You look like you've never touched a wrench in your life." "I learn fast," I said, "and I have nowhere else to go. I'll sweep the floors, I'll haul the scrap, just give me a corner to sleep in." She grunted. "I'm Sarah. We don't have a corner to sleep in, but we have a night shift that needs a watcher. Pay is minimum, and you'll smell like burnt iron for the rest of your life. Deal?" Deal. The Foundry became my home. I swept iron filings until my lungs ached. I watched the welders, the fabricators, the artists who turned raw industrial waste into structural beauty. I started using the scrap metal at night, teaching myself to weld, turning my sketches of broken buildings into small, jagged sculptures. One night, a regular client, a high-end restaurant owner named Silas, saw one of my pieces on the workbench. "Who made the armor?" he asked. "It's not armor," I said, wiping grease from my forehead. "It's a house that won't fall down." He bought it for $500. It was the first time I'd ever felt like I owned my own shadow.
Over the next few years, I worked double shifts. I took community college classes in structural engineering. I moved from the shop floor to my own small studio. I started designing furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, pieces made of reclaimed steel and shattered glass, held together by visible, beautiful welds. I leaned into the mistakes. I made the scars of the metal the focal point. By 24, I was the name people whispered in the design world, the girl from the Foundry. I was successful, I was wealthy, and I was entirely, blissfully alone. Then came the call, not from my parents, but from Leo. He sounded different, stripped of the arrogance he'd worn like a cloak. "Nancy," he whispered, "it's over. The firm, Alistair, got caught up in a Ponzi scheme. He was trying to cover losses from a bad development in Dubai. The feds moved in this morning. They're seizing the Aspen house. They're seizing everything." I sat in my studio, looking at a chair I'd just finished, a throne of blackened steel. "And," I said, "they're homeless, Nancy. Literally. Mom is staying in a motel that smells like cigarettes. They're begging to see you. They heard about your success. They think you can fix the mistake." I felt a cold shiver of satisfaction that should have scared me, but it didn't. "Tell them to meet me at the old house in 48 hours. I'll be there for the auction." The Aspen mansion looked like a corpse. The glass was smudged, the lawn was brown, and the seized tape fluttered in the wind like a yellow ribbon on a funeral wreath. My parents were standing by the gate, huddled together. Vivian's hair was gray at the roots, her designer coat pilled and dirty. Alistair looked small. For the first time in my life, he looked like a man who could be knocked over by a breeze. "Nancy," Vivian gasped, stepping toward me. "Thank God. You have to help us. The lawyers say if we can just get a bridge loan, if we can just show some assets." "I'm not here to give you a loan, Vivian," I said. I didn't call her Mom. That word had died in a bus station in Idaho. "We were so proud when we heard about your designs. We always knew you had that spark. That night at the gala, we were just trying to toughen you up. It was a father's love, Nancy." "A father's love doesn't have a laugh track," I said. I walked into the auction. I sat in the front row. I watched as the things they had worshipped, the art, the furniture, the very walls that had housed my misery, were sold off piece by piece. When the house itself came up, I raised my paddle. I didn't stop until the hammer fell. I bought the house, every glass wall, every steel beam. Afterward, in the empty foyer, I handed them a packet of papers. "This is your lifeline," I said. Vivienne reached for it, her eyes filling with hope. "You're letting us stay?" "Read the contract," I said. The terms were brutal. I would provide them with a small 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood in Seattle. I would pay their basic utilities and a modest grocery allowance. In exchange, they would sign over every remaining personal asset. They would undergo mandatory financial counseling, and most importantly, they would work. Vivienne would volunteer 40 hours a week at a women's shelter for those fleeing domestic abuse. Alistair would work at the foundry as a floor sweeper, under Sarah's supervision. "You want me to sweep floors?" Alistair whispered, horrified, "in front of people who know me?" "I want you to learn what it's like to be the help," I said. "I want you to see the 1% write-off from the bottom up." "And if we say no?" Vivienne asked, her old arrogance flickering for a second. "Then you can sleep in that motel until the money runs out, which, according to these bank statements, should be about Tuesday." They signed. They had no choice. The most dramatic moment didn't happen in a courtroom or at an auction. It happened 3 months later. I went to the foundry to check on a shipment. I saw my father, Alistair, in a stained jumpsuit pushing a broom across the oily floor. He stopped when he saw me. He didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. "Nancy," he said, leaning on the broom. "You missed a spot by the lathe, Alistair," I said. He looked down, nodded, and went back to work. I turned my childhood home in Aspen into a retreat for young artists, kids who had been told they were the mistakes in their own families. We call it the error room. On the wall of the dining room, where the mahogany table used to stand, I had a quote engraved in the steel. The things they wish to write off are the only things that endure. My parents are still in that apartment. I see them once a year for a formal dinner, not at a club, but at the diner where I used to eat when I was broke. We don't talk about the past. We talk about the cost of eggs and the weather. They are small people, living small lives, and they finally know that they were never the architects of my story. They were just the debris I had to clear before I could build something that mattered. Revenge isn't a scream. It's the sound of a broom hitting the floor, day after day, in a room you no longer own.